And the previous shirim on this week's parsha, which is Parshat Emor, are from last year. There was a shir. All these shirim that I'm talking about are all on TorahAnytime.com. Search for them, listen to them, because each shir is different. I like to make each shir different, so you get different insights. So from last year, there was a shir called Monkey See, Monkey Do. From 2 years ago, there's a shir called Find Me. And from 3 years ago, there was a shir called Grinding the Axe. Right. So, Baruch Hashem, I have just got back yesterday from an exhilarating whirlwind job. So I went with my son Binyamin to Cambridge on Sunday night because we were working at the Kef Bikeathon. What is the Kef Bikeathon? Well, for those of you outside the UK, it is a bike ride in aid of Camp Kef, which is a camp that, which is an organisation that helps children with special needs, very, very special, beautiful children. I've seen them, and we went to, there were about 120 bikers taking part. There is a reason why I'm telling you this, by the way. And they all stayed overnight at a hotel in Cambridgeshire, actually. And the following morning, which was yesterday morning, Monday morning, they set off from Cambridgeshire all the way to London and Hendon Park, to be precise. So what was I doing there with my son Binyamin, who was only 15 years old? Well, let me put your mind at ease. I was not doing the bike ride. My physical fitness goes as far as my running. If I were to go on a bike, probably the length of here to the local shops, I would come back in agony. Baruch Hashem, I'm proficient at running. I run 4 times a week. But biking uses different muscles. So I was not there for the biking. What was I there for? So we were employed to do aerial videography, to do shots of the bikers from the air. You know, anyone who's heard my previous shiurim about the quadcopter know that we own a drone fitted with a camera, and it flies in the air and it takes aerial shots. And we were to follow the bikers, stop at specific points, launch the copter, film them going past. And as people got to hear about it, because we were a last minute addition, people didn't know that we were going to do this. As people found out, as the bikers found out why we were there, they got excited. And my son Binyamin, who actually flies the thing, I don't really fly it, he said to me, "Daddy, you know, everyone is really excited about this thing. You know, and I was thinking to myself, why would they get so excited about, you know, I mean, okay, it's a bit of a novelty, etc. And I was thinking to myself that perhaps we could say that we like to look at things from a different perspective. We see things from, you know, as we walk, as we see, as we conduct our daily lives, but there's a perspective that we have that is totally beyond our, almost completely beyond our scope of vision. And that is to look at things from above, from a very high perspective. Now, of course, anyone can get in a plane and have a look, or a helicopter, if you're daring enough, and have a look at things, you know, from the sky. But it's much of a rarity, and especially if you're flying anywhere, you know, abroad, all you're going to see is clouds. And when you're landing, you see a little bit. But to look at things which are, you know, you're not too high that things, you can't even see what's going on. You're not too low that it would be just as if you're standing on a ladder. You're sort of in between. And who has that perspective? Who is the only one who has that true perspective is Hashem. We don't get to see. We don't get to look down from the clouds. So people have this fascination. That is incredible to know, what do we look like from Hashem's perspective. That's my take on it. That's my understanding of it. And they were raising money for this wonderful organization called Camp Kef. And the last count, because they were still raising money while they were doing the bike ride, at the last count, they raised, this is only 120 people, they raised £300,000, okay? Over £250,000. I'm not talking dollars, I'm talking sterling. And that's a lot of money, yeah? Now these are people who, a lot of them are worth a pretty penny. They're Baruch Hashem, they're very well off. Hashem has treated them very kindly. And Hashem treats all of us kindly. But you can see that they have a parnassah. Nobody would excuse them from staying at home and enjoying their parnassah, sitting in the garden. But they choose to go out. And I say this with the greatest of respect. Some of them, you can see the chulent has had its effect. The kugel has had its effect. And it must be very hard for these guys. I know it will be hard for me. Kugel hasn't been too kind to me either. Yeah? So it must be very hard for them. You know, it's 60 miles in one day. Now that's a lot. That's a lot. It took them from 9:30. Some of them arrived back. Most of them arrived back about 3:30. There was a few pit stops along the way. But they really put themselves out. And I was thinking, what is the connection between that bike ride and this week's parasha? Well, this week's parasha talks about the Kohanim. And the Kohanim get everywhere. There are so many parashot that mention Kohanim. This parasha is dedicated to the Kohanim. So just like the Kef bike riders get everywhere, so do the Kohanim. And they feature very prominently in this week's parasha. And obviously that's a joke, but I will explain a little bit more about how I think it ties in with the parasha. So let's start off with Chaf Aleph, Pasuk Yud. That's 21, and it's verse 10. V'hakohen gadol me'echav asher yutzak al rosho shemen hamishcha umilei et yado lidbosh et habagadim et rosho lo yifra uvegadav lo yifra. Now this and the following two psukim talk about, God forbid, if the Kohen Gadol has a loss, he has a family member that he loses, and his job is to be in the temple. So he's ensconced there, and now what happens? The unexpected happens. Always expect the unexpected. That's a very good credo to live by. Always expect the unexpected. So something happened to him. He lost a family member. So what is the first thing that comes to mind is you want to go and you go to do all the arrangements and see that the burial is okay, and go and stand at the graveside and everything. So first of all, being a Kohen, let alone a Kohen Gadol, being a Kohen precludes you from taking part in regular burials, although when there are close family members, Kohanim have different rights as to, they can be in proximity with the dead body. But on a general basis, a Kohen is not allowed to go to a graveyard. But here we have a specific instruction. If we actually look at, where is it? Yeah, at Pasuk 12, it expands this idea. Umin hamigdash lo yetzei, v'lo yachalel et migdash elokav. What is the Kohen Gadol's commandment? What is his instruction? If, God forbid, he has a tragedy like this, he cannot leave the Beit HaMikdash. He is, in effect, he's tied to his job, and he cannot leave the environment of the temple. Now, at first blush, this sounds cruel. Let's be honest. It sounds insensitive. It sounds like, well, listen, the Kohen Gadol is a faithful servant of Hashem. His whole life is dedicated to serving Hashem in the best way possible. He's the one who goes lifnai ulifnim, inside the Holy of Holies on the holiest day of the year. And he's the servant of Hashem par excellence. So give him compassionate leave. Why hold him up inside the Beit HaMikdash? Why imprison him? So let me dispel this idea immediately. Because we're not talking about any person. We're talking about the Kohen Gadol. And in the times of the Midbar, the Kohen Gadol was Aharon. Now, an ordinary person, yes, you could be excused for thinking that this might be a tad cruel. But we're talking about Aharon HaKohen. We're talking about the Kohen Gadol. We're talking about somebody who was above all that. The very reason that we gave that he serves Hashem with all his life, with every ounce of his strength, is exactly why we expect more from him. We expect him to be in tune with what Hashem wants. Need I go any further and explain Aaron HaKohen's reaction to when his two sons died in front of him? 2 words encapsulate Aaron HaKohen's reaction. Vayidom Aaron. And Aaron was silent. That's how it's normally translated. But it really means, and Aaron was inert. He was immobile. He was like demama. He was like a stone. He was inanimate. Why? Because he did not stray outside of the environs of being an Eved Hashem. He was totally in tune with Hashem. So Hashem does something, Aaron is with him. Come what may. That's why the Kohen Gadol is told to stay inside the Beit HaMikdash. He's got a job to do. He has a responsibility for all of Klal Yisrael. We cannot, we expect him to put Klal Yisrael before his own personal needs. Now again, I'll stress this. This sounds cruel, but we're not talking about ordinary human beings. We're talking about the Kohen Gadol. And he is beyond that. He's very much a person who will put Klal Yisrael before his own personal needs, as we see very clearly Aaron HaKohen. Not just with the death of his 2 sons, with his whole life. He always put the Klal first. Always. And you see here, a tremendous lesson comes out of this. Because the Jewish people as a whole, I'm talking about Kohanim, and I'm also talking about Leviim, and I'm also talking about Yisraelim. I'm talking about Gans Klal Yisrael is described in the Torah as Mamlechet Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh. A nation of priests and a holy nation. So we're all Kohanim. The Kohanim really that we know as Kohanim are the priests of the priests. Because every Jew is a priest. They don't have the priestly responsibilities that the real dyed-in-the-wool priests have, right? We don't have the prohibition of not going to the graveyard. We don't have a commandment to bless the Jewish people by the Duchan, when we bless. For Sephardim, we do it every day. For Ashkenazim, they do it on Chagim. We don't have that obligation. But we are supposed to be Kohanim, all of us. To who? To who are we supposed to be priests? To the whole world. A nation of priests to the whole world. So therefore, what lesson comes out of this? If the Kohen is supposed to be have a higher expectation. Hashem has a higher expectation of him over and above all of Klal Yisrael. Then by extension, the Jews, who are a nation of priests, Hashem has a higher expectation of us over all the nations of the world. Now that is a reality. Whether you think this is, it's definitely not meant to be racist. Nothing to do with racism. If I turn around and say, I don't believe in the Kohen Gadol, I don't believe in Kohanim, I also want to be a Kohen. I also want to be why should the Kohanim be? Just because they're the son of a Kohen, who is the son of a Kohen, why can't I be a Kohen? Yeah? Then I become, from an ordinary person, I become Korach. Because that's what Korach said. He didn't believe in this hierarchy. But be that as it may, we have to understand that there is a caste system. There are different roles within Klal Yisrael and within humanity. For me to get jealous of a Kohen is for me to be jealous that I'm a Sephardi, I want to be an Ashkenazi. I'm a man, I want to be a woman. Nowadays it's not so simple to make that type of statement. But, I was born in Stamford Hill, and I wish I was born in Tahiti. It's ridiculous that you're making an argument with something you have no choice. That choice was already made for you. So the choice for me to be a Kohen, it's not a choice I can make. It's already been made for me. So for me to start going on and on and on and on about it has no bearing on reality. It's hevel havalim. It's a waste of time. So the same thing, to turn around and say racist, this and that, we've all got our own job to do. The sooner we focus on doing what we're supposed to be doing and not whinging about what we're not supposed to be doing, the sooner we can get on and fulfill our life's job. Hashem doesn't want us. Hashem didn't want me to be a Kohen. Otherwise I would be a Kohen. So I've got to concentrate on being Yisrael. On being the best Mashiach Kalati that I can be. Finished. That's it. So if a person is not Jewish, be the best non-Jew that you can be. Keep the 7 mitzvot. Learn about them. Keep them. You'll be a better off person. Don't start, complaining or whinging. And be the best you can be. And if you've mastered the 7 and you want to go further, you want to convert, okay, it's our job to put you off. Because we don't want insincere converts. If you really want to do it, then you'll do it. But to go and spout hot air and say, oh, this and that, okay, do what you're supposed to do. Never just talk for the talk's sake. Action has to follow talk. Okay, I hope I'm not being too hard and being too offensive. God forbid, it's not my intention at all. I really should act with more sensitivity. So, Mesirat Nefesh, that's what's expected of the Kohen. To give himself. And that's really what I and my son Binyamin saw on Sunday night and on Monday during the day. We saw Mesirat Nefesh. We saw people who really were not born and bred bikers. They were born and bred to do what they did, but they put themselves out. And they were huffing and puffing and going up hills and schwitzing, and I can't tell you, but they pushed, and there were people, the marshals were going up and down the road in the vans, geeing them on. Come on, you can do it. You're giving them chizuk. Mi ka'amcha Yisrael, who is like Am Yisrael, that they go and they push beyond their boundaries with this Mesirat Nefesh. It was very, very heartening and gave us a lot of chizuk. Now, by the way, can I just tell you what siyata d'shmaya that we had yesterday for this bike ride? I can't tell you. There was such a fear, a pachad, that it was going to rain. It would be so difficult because if it rains and then people would be schwitzing, it was so much harder. And of course, for us to fly in that weather would have been ridiculous. Forget it, it wouldn't have worked. We literally had, from the morning to the end of the race, we had beautiful weather. Now, contrast that with today. If you look, not only is the weather way, way much colder, but there's gale force winds outside. I came out of shul this evening. There was one of those big, estate agent signs that are outside somebody's house saying house for sale on the floor. The big wooden thing there's stuff all over the. It's crazy. People are getting blown around left, right, and centre. Can you imagine if we had that weather yesterday, and bikers flying along the road, shredding up the roads, and they're in this condition? They would have had to call it off. We had Siyata Dishma, and we must recognise it for that. Now, let me tell you a couple more points about the parasha. I'm going to end off with a couple of stories. So, if we progress now to, where are we? To Perek 22, Perek Kaf Beit, and let's go to Pasuk Lamed Aleph, which is today's date. I say today's count. We're in the middle of the Omer, if you get my drift. So, Kaf Gimel, 22, and it's Pasuk 31. So I'll quote here, Ushmartem mitzvotai vasitem otam ani Adonai. Ushmartem, what does that mean? And you shall keep my mitzvot and do them, because I am Hashem. So, what is the word ushmartem? When you keep the mitzvot, vasitim otam, you do the mitzvot. That should be, what a mitzvah is supposed to. What you're supposed to do with the mitzvah. You're supposed to keep the mitzvah. What's all this ushmartem? We know what the word shomer means. Shomer Yisrael. Shomer She'erit Yisrael. What does the word shomer mean? It means to guard. You shall guard my mitzvot. Why is that phrase in this pasuk? When you keep a mitzvah, you keep a mitzvah. You don't keep a mitzvah, you don't keep a mitzvah. What's all this guarding business? So listen to this story. And with this story, you'll see what the Khatam Sofer understands is the meaning of the word Shemartem. While we say the word Shomer, like a person is Shomer Shabbat, he guards the Shabbat. Listen to this story. So, there was a community in Holland who had a rabbi, an amazing rabbi, and they also had an amazing Chevra Kadisha. Now, Chevra Kadisha is an organization that looks after all the dealings that they have to do when, God forbid, somebody passes away. All the burial arrangements, the tahara of the dead body, when they have to wash the dead body, etc., and all the other funeral arrangements. It's called a chesed shel emet. We've talked about this many times in the past. It's a chesed which is unparalleled, because it means a chesed that you do where you do not have any remuneration. You don't get paid for it. Not that you don't get paid for being on the Chevra Kadisha, but any chesed that you do, you don't have the person saying thank you or paying you for. You do the chesed, and it's selfless. It's one way. So the people who are in the Chevra Kadisha, who are in the burial society, are, in short, they are tzaddikim. There's no question. They are tzaddikim, and they have to be revered, and we have to be in awe of them. So there was a Chevra Kadisha associated with this community in Holland, and the rabbi arranged for them. They purchased a brand new burial plot. Maybe the old burial plot was all used up. You know my joke, people are dying to get in. I'm not going to say it again now because it's not funny. So they had bought this brand spanking new burial plot, and they dedicated it. It was incredible and whatever. A short time later, ironically, somebody from the community passed away. And he was going to be the first person to be buried in this burial plot. And when they came to bury this fellow inside the grounds, they were shocked to discover that the grave had already been dug. And they were thinking, well, this is just too weird. What's going on here? So listen to this story, how that grave happened to be dug. because that grave was dug by somebody called Moshe Cohen. And you'll see what I mean. It'll dawn in you as I'm telling you the story. Moshe Cohen had a yearning, because if I'm not mistaken, he was part of the Chevra Kedisha. I don't know how, or maybe he wasn't part of it, because being a Cohen, it doesn't stand to reason. Okay, so he was part of the community. He had a burning desire to be part of the whole Chesed Shel Emet thing. He wanted to dig a grave, but he could never do that, because a Cohen can't go into a graveyard. So when the community bought the new graveyard, he saw his opportunity and he jumped to it. He thought, it's now or never, because there's not one dead body in this new graveyard. I will go in and I will dig one grave while I can, while there's nobody there, no dead body. I can go in, I can walk around left, right, up, down, no problem. He dug the grave, he did the mitzvah, and he went away. And the person who died was none other than Moshe Cohen himself. So, irony of ironies, the fellow waited and yearned to do that chesed, to do with dead bodies, which he could never hope to do ever. He saw his opportunity, he grabbed it, and he ended up digging his own grave. Isn't that incredible? It's just, it's beyond, it's mind-boggling how much a person can anticipate a mitzvah, and from nowhere, where on earth would a person get a Kohen get a mitzvah like that? First of all, it comes to show you, look at a holy Kohanim. That they're so enveloped with love of Hashem and love of mitzvot that they go and do, not only do they do the mitzvahs they can do, but they even go and do mitzvahs that they can't do. Because he found a situation, just like a person when he sees a bird in the nest and he wants to do shiloh hakein. It's now or never. You do the mitzvah or the mitzvah will run away. You have to do it there and then. So this Kohen saw his opportunity, he grabbed it, and he did the greatest chesed. The chesed he did was for none other than himself. Incredible true story. So how does that affect our understanding of the word ushmartem? So says the Chatam Sofer, ushmartem means not just to guard. In this context, it means to anticipate. Because if you go back to Yaakov Avinu, when he heard the dreams from his son Yosef, it says, Va'aviv, I'm quoting from memory, Shamar et hadavar. His father Shamar the thing. Right? What does it mean, Shamar? What happened? When he heard his son Yosef tell the dreams, he wrote it down. That's what the pshat is. The pshat is he heard the dream about bowing down and the stars and everything. He wrote it down. He wrote it down. He wanted it to have a testimony. But ushmartem, says the Chatam Sofer, means deeper than that. It means he anticipated, he was waiting for the day when that dream would come true. That's what ushmartem means. It means to wait and anticipate. And in Yiddish they say chalish. There's no use waiting, sitting back and being, just saying, oh, mitzvahs, when they hit me in the face, then I'll do them. Yeah? You go out and you find your mitzvot. And if you can't find a mitzvah, you wait and you literally, you're schwitzing till the mitzvah comes your way. And when it comes your way, you grab it. You don't even give a second's hesitation. That's what ushmartem means. That's what the Kohen was supposed to do. He's supposed to not to wait. He's supposed to be so like chomping at the bit, as they say, as the phrase goes. That's what Moshe Cohen did. And that's what we as a nation are supposed to do. Mamlechet Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh. We're supposed to be waiting, not waiting for mitzvahs to go away, like waiting for the day when we don't have to say tachlon and we're running away from mitzvot. And we're so happy to be patur. The generation where we're all, I'm so happy I'm patur. I'm so happy it's not my problem anymore. I'm so happy I've got one less mitzvah to do. We should be screaming, Hashem, you gave us 613, halavai, you didn't give us 620 or 630, whatever. Pick a number. Only 613? I wish I had more. That's what we should be feeling. We should be gasping and going, so now that we've got 613, let's do our level best to keep them. Whichever ones we can keep on an individual basis. You know, no human being, it's impossible for a human being by himself to keep the 613 mitzvot. It's impossible. Because you have to be a Kohen, a Levi, a man, a woman. It doesn't work. So how are we supposed to keep the Tariag mitzvot? The answer is, we join with our other chevra, our other Jews, and we become like one. So we are at one with the Kohen, and we are at one with the Levi, and with the men, and with the women, and the children, and with the, God forbid, the divorcees, and all the other, and the parents, and we're all joined as one. That way we can keep the 613 mitzvot. No man is an island. We must be part of Klal Yisrael. Otherwise, we cannot hope to keep the 613. So, let's move on to none other than the next pasuk, pasuk 32. V'lo techalalu et shem kodshi v'nigdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael. Don't make a chilul Hashem. Don't profane the name of God, because that's not what you're here for. You're here for the exact polar opposite. You're here to bring up and promote Hashem's name in this world. Not to, God forbid, cause it to be profaned. There's enough people who are doing that in this world, unfortunately. Yeah? Hashem doesn't need his Jewish people or his supporters to go and do the opposite of what we're supposed to do. We're fighting against the tide. So can you imagine, can you possibly perceive what Hashem, from Hashem's perspective, he's got 99, let's say, 90%, 95% of the world, all couldn't care less about Hashem, or got the wrong idea about Hashem, or have no idea, or they're agnostic or whatever. And there's a small handful, comparatively, of people in the world who are promoting Hashem, Jews and non-Jews. There are righteous Gentiles in this world you wouldn't believe. Many of them write to me, and they should be blessed because they're promoting Hashem's name and they support the Jews. If you support the Jews, you're in an incredible position, because that, you know, we need support. So you support the Jewish people, in all honesty, it's a tremendous thing. So can you imagine if the whole world is against Hashem and the Jewish people also profaning Hashem's name? What a travesty that is. And it is almost, I would say not completely, because it's not completely, it's almost an unforgivable sin. Certainly it's unforgivable in our lifetime. The only way a person can achieve kapara is only after he passes away from this world. Chilul Hashem is a taint. You can do teshuvah for it, you can cry, you can scream, and you can wipe it out. But the death of a person is a kapara for Chilul Hashem. So make sure you stay as far away from Chilul Hashem as possible, because it's the opposite of the job you're supposed to be doing in this world. Now, it's not all doom and gloom, yeah, because sometimes we do it inadvertently and we are so sorry we did it. So make a Kiddush Hashem. Dedicate your life to doing what you're supposed to do. Sanctify Hashem's name in this world. That's how we eradicate and we turn around what could be a terrible disaster. Now look at this story. Listen to this story about a person who made a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. So there was a fellow, I believe he was an Avreich, and it came to Ben Azmanim, and he wanted to take his family on a tiul. So they went to visit Meron or somewhere, somewhere up north. As we're coming up to Lag BaOmer, many people go to Meron on Lag BaOmer. There's a lot to be said about that. You have to be very careful. Rav Avadia enjoins people to be, you have to be very careful. He says it's not a chiyuv to go there, especially when there's pritzut there, you have to be very careful. My advice would be ask your local rabbi and see what Rav Avadia says and then make an informed decision. Anyway, so going to Meron, this fellow took his family in the car, and as he was parking into a parking space, he clipped the side of one of the parked cars were there. And of course, what did he do? He immediately got out of the car, and there was nobody in the car. He looked, he saw there wasn't any major damage, but there was a tiny scratch. It was purely cosmetic. You probably couldn't even notice it. Now, he was a Ben Torah and he was a mensch. You're going to see why. Because he got out. What was he going to do? Hang around there? Wait? How do you? So what did he do? He wrote a note. He put his name. He put his phone number on there. He put where he was staying. And he wrote on the car, please forgive me. If there's any damage, please contact me. I will pay for it unquestionably. He didn't want to have a cheshbon. Somebody was upset with him and feeling bad on his account. So it's something that it wasn't a terrible damage at all. Probably you wouldn't even notice it. But for him, no, he wanted to do the right thing. So he put the note on the car and he went away. So I think it was that evening or maybe a little bit later, he got a knock on his hotel room. And as he opened the door, there was a fellow standing there with a camera. He immediately clicked the camera. He took a picture of the fellow. So now this fellow is thinking, what? I'm followed by paparazzi coming to take pictures of me in my hotel? So he said, well, how come he took a picture of me? So the fellow at the door said, I'm the fellow whose car you scratched and you left the note on. And I came specifically to take a picture of you. Yeah, now, at this point, by the way, I should stop and say, if that was me listening to this, I would think, oy vey, the guy wants to take a picture of me, he wants to take me to court, he wants to drag me through the court system. I will be platzing and schwitzing at this point. Listen to what the fellow said. He said, I want to take a picture of you because I cannot believe that people like you still exist. People with honesty, people with integrity. Where I come from, we would have walked away from something like that. You went, you put a note, you apologized. He said, I want a record of the person who did such a thing. I'm shocked that people with such honesty and integrity exist in our day and age. You couldn't believe it. So they talked, they exchanged, etc. I don't know if they exchanged phone numbers after. He had his phone number anyway. But Sachakol, the story had a very happy ending. Because the fellow, would you believe it, the fellow whose car was scratched by the Avreich, he wasn't a religious person at all, or hardly any religious observance. He became a Baal Teshuvah purely because of the incredible menschlichkeit of this Avreich. As something we would think, whatever. But he did not want to make a Chilul Hashem. And he ended up making a Kiddush Hashem, and he changed that fellow's life. You see, a person can even make a mistake, like scratching somebody's car by accident, and if he's got the right attitude, tremendous things can come out of that. Yeah, we shouldn't think, oh, woe is me, etc. You can make the best out of a bad situation. Now I'm going to end off a little bit early, I think. I'm going to tell you that story. I'm going to tell you a phenomenal, phenomenal story. And I might have to refer to my main notes here. I might have to read something out. I'm not really supposed to read from my notes. It doesn't make it natural, but it's just such a tremendous story. But I'm just going to leave my notes. I'm going to refer to them in case I don't want to miss out any detail from this story. So it happens. It's a true story. There was once a couple who were married, had a wonderful, wonderful marriage, blissfully happy. They had everything. Wonderful, Torah true couple. What was missing? I think you can guess. They didn't have any children. And the years rolled by, and the despair started to set in. And you know, there's a din that, you know, if you get married and it's just not happening, they're not having any children, then you can get divorced. I believe it's after 10 years you can get divorced. It's not the, you know, okay, it's a very difficult subject to talk about, but it's just to give, maybe one of them has an issue, and it's to give the other party a chance. I'm not going to get into the whys and wherefores of this because it's a very painful subject, and I'm certainly not qualified to talk about this. You know, so let's just leave that as is. So they were married for many years, and after 15 years of marriage, they still didn't have any children. And they made the decision they were going to get divorced. Nothing to do with themselves. They just genuinely, each one wanted to have children. They didn't know what, this, that, the other, what. And they got divorced. And of course it was terribly sad. A couple torn apart like this. And the get came through, and they were fully divorced in Jewish law. And then something happened. The wife discovered that she was pregnant. Now, if I stop the story at this point, you would think, yay, fantastic! They're going to have a second marriage. It's going to be chaval al azman. There's going to be a band. There's going to be simcha. There'll be people dancing and crying and everything. And even though the kala will be pregnant under the chuppah, don't forget. But there's one very important point I neglected to mention on purpose, and that is that the man was a Kohen. Now I know we've been talking a lot about Kohanim, but let me express one point that you may or may not know. That a Kohen is not allowed to marry a divorcee, even if the divorcee is his own wife. So now can you imagine, or possibly you can't imagine, I certainly can't imagine, the predicament that this couple, this loving couple were in, that now, after 15 years, they had this bracha and they can't even enjoy it as a married couple. Talk about, I say the word very hesitatingly, talk about unlucky. You're going to see luck has nothing to do with this. Because listen to this story. They went to talk about their pain. They went to Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Shlita. And of course the husband expressed everything. And they looked, is there any way, there's any heter, there's any kolab, there's any way we can get remarried again? This is disastrous, what we're going to do, what's going to be with me and my wife, what's going to be with the child? So of course, Rav Chaim Kanievsky shared in their pain. And he said, I cannot see any way that you can get married to your wife again. But, he said, you must go and see my father-in-law, Lahavdil ben Chaim Nachaim, Rav Eliashiv. Yeah, so this was a few years ago when he was still alive. Go and see Rav Eliashiv. And the man, of course, he was a great, he had emunat chachamim. So the Kohen went, and he went to Rav Eliashiv. And he poured out his heart. And of course the Rav heard the story. And I'm sure he cried with this Kohen. But he said, look, the halacha is not mine to change. I cannot see any way that you will be able to get remarried to your wife. The only thing you can do now is to go to the kotel and pour out your heart to Hashem. And that was it. Now that was Rav Elyashiv. And the man, if you listen to Rav Kanievsky, he listened to Rav Elyashiv, he was a man who believed in the power of Chachamim. So it seemed like there was no way out of it. He had two Gedolei Hador tell him the same thing. Where else would he turn other than Hashem? He went to the Kotel, and you can imagine the tears. You can imagine the pain. And he's at the Kotel, he's crying to Hashem, help me, help me, help me. And then he feels somebody tap him on the back. And he turned around, and there was a rabbi, Talmid Chacham, standing in front of him. And he said, Chabid, can I ask what you're praying for? I said, I've never seen such a fervent davening. Is there something I can help you with? So the Kohen, of course, I'm sure this must have been very reluctant. He poured out his heart to this complete stranger. He had never clapped eyes on this fellow before, and he had no idea where he was from. Nothing. He tells him the whole story. I'm sure he cried as well. And the fellow turned around to him and he said, Reb Yid, do you have a father? So the Kohen said, listen, what's that got to do with anything? He says, yeah, I have a father. My father's still alive. He said, but he's not compos mentis. He's not with it. He's in a nursing home in America, and he's lost the art of communication. He just sits all day incommunicado. So now, the Kohen did not know where this was going. I'm sure he felt miyash, helpless, but he was still talking to the Talmid Chacham. So the Talmid Chacham turned to the Kohen and he said, you know, if you want to follow my advice, I'll tell you what I think you should do. I think you need to take a plane, fly to the States, go speak with your father, speak it out with him, talk to him, and see what he's got to say. But the Kohen just turned to me and said, look, I told you, he's in a nursing home, he can't speak. It's pointless. Why would I go and see him? And, I'm not going to get anything of any sense from him. He said, listen, I know what you're thinking, but I'm telling you, I think the right thing is to go, take the plane, go see your father. And again, the Kohen who'd listened to Rav Kanievsky, he'd listened to Rav Elyashiv, he listened to this complete stranger who told him something that made absolutely no sense. It was hopelessness after hopelessness after hopelessness. And he booked a flight, he got on a plane, and he went to visit his father in that nursing home. Now, don't ask me the strength of character of this man, where he got the strength of character. I don't know. I do not know. Because he found himself, I think it was 24 hours later, he was at the nursing home. I don't know how he got a plane so quickly, by the way. He was next to his father in the nursing home, and he told his father the whole story, and his father's sitting there, Nebuch is like a vegetable. He doesn't even know if his father's, he probably thinks his father's listening. He doesn't know if he's comprehending. He doesn't know anything. And the nurses are there and they're thinking, what on earth is this fellow doing, talking to his father? It's pointless. As if he's going to get advice. And the fellow, when he was telling the story to his father, he was crying his eyes out. All the events of being married for 15 years, having to get divorced, the pregnancy, he can't get married, he was in such a situation, The halacha was not going with him. The Gedolei Hador, they couldn't help him. And now he's doing this thing. He's talking it out with his father. And his father started to speak. Can you imagine this? Pele Plaim. And his father begins to speak. I'm not sure if it was garbled words or whether he was speaking and maybe writing it down, but the message came out. Because the father said, "My son, you are wrong." And I'm quoting, "It is a mistake. You are not my biological son. After the Holocaust, your mother and I realized that we could no longer have children, so we adopted you as an infant and raised you as our child, which you are, but you are not a Kohen. So there is no reason that you cannot remarry your former wife." Can you believe that? From the depths of despair, to hear something like that? Oi, to be at that chuppah. Can you imagine that second marriage? The tears of joy. Forget the tears of pain. The tears of pure joy after 15 years. And to come out with that. You know what I get from that story? I get from that story the tremendous reward that Hashem gave this fellow because he listened to his Chachamim. He had emunat Chachamim. He said, "Hashem, you have given us tzaddikim. You've given us Gedolei Hador. And whatever's happening in my life does not make sense. But one thing makes sense. You told me to try my best. I'm trying my best. And I don't care if it doesn't make sense. Hashem, you told me to try my best, and that's what I'm going to do." And that's what he did. And look at the reward. Who would ever have imagined such an ending to such a story? Rabotai, we have to push ourselves to our limits. Don't let it just be 120 bikers who push themselves to their limits after all that chulent and kugel to go out and schwitz and get to the finishing line. It has to be all of us. It doesn't have to be those 120, I'm saying quote unquote Kohanim, because they were like our Kohanim. They went out there and did more than what was expected of them. We also have to be like those 120 riders. We also have to push ourselves beyond our limits. We also have to do what doesn't make sense, but we have to do what's right. Forget the sense. Stop making sense. Stop worrying about that. Do what's right, Rabotai. We have to do what's right. Yiratzon, all of us will push ourselves to our limits and even beyond our limits to do what Hashem asks for us. And then Hashem will do what we want from Him and what He desperately wants to give us. And that is the Geula Shlema, the Biat Goel Tzedek, Mashiach Tzidkenu, Yiratzon, in the merit of the bikers and all the wonderful Jewish people and all the our wonderful supporters who help us. Bring Mashiach now without any pain. V'chein yasam l'mar amen.